Called to order. Okay. Good morning. Corporate and Residential Services Committee will be called to order. This meeting will be recorded and live streamed, excluding in-camera topics. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Mi'kma'ki and the district of Spagnagity, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. East Hants further acknowledges the 50 African Nova Scotian communities whose 400-year history have contributed to the province's culture, history, and legacies. We are all treaty people. Are there any changes to the agenda of all subcommittees?
Yes, I'd like to move an addition to corporate and residential services for the approval of the pension cost certificate.
Okay, the change is made, right?
You would have any discussion.
Okay. So seeing no one to discuss that. All those in favor? Okay, that's been added to the agenda. Any changes to the minutes of February 13th, 2025? Seeing no changes, the minutes are approved. Our first item is new employee introductions. CAO?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This morning, I'm very pleased to introduce a couple of new staff who are with us today, both joining the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department. Both of these folks are very community-minded and have fantastic backgrounds that they both bring from community work and community development and recreation. So we're very pleased today to welcome first Leah Terry. Leah has a background in events management. She is our new tourism and events supervisor. She'll be joining us for a term position and taking over responsibilities for Burnt Coat, major events and whatnot. And she brings with her a huge background in events, cultural events, recreation programming, and a lot of arts and cultural fare. So we're very pleased to have Leah with us and have her join us with her skill set. And we can't wait to see what she does for the next several months. The next is Dan Chisholm. Dan joins us as the new Community Recreation Coordinator, a new position with East Hants this year in this year's budget, bringing more recreation and programming to folks in East Hants. Dan has worked with several recreation departments in Pictou County, Colchester County, Trenton, and several other facilities. So we're pretty excited to see what he can bring to East Hants. And that, along with his studies in community studies and recreation, we're just very excited to have you on board. So welcome to both of you. The next is some employee position changes. So we've had a little bit of a shakeup in our finance department of late. As you all know, Janice Taylor retired after working for the municipality as manager of finance. So Jordan Balser has moved into the manager of finance position, which left his budget analyst position vacant, which we're filling at the moment. Council also approved the creation of a new position called finance coordinator to oversee some of the back office work that has taken over in the last little while. So Tamara Marshall, who was our revenue coordinator, has moved into the finance coordinator role to take over that supervision role. And we have our tax administrator, Jenna Robar, has now moved into the revenue coordinator role that Tamara had. So lots of good succession planning at work and lots of great movement for folks in the finance department. So we've still got a couple of positions to fill based on all that movement, but really looking forward to seeing what this team in finance can accomplish in the next, 20 years or so.
Thank you. Our next item, and we welcome everyone who's just coming on board and those who are changing positions as well. Our next item is draft 2025-26 water utility budget with Wade Tatry and Jordan Balser.
Thank you. So through the chair, today I will be presenting the 2025-2026 to 2027-2028 three-year water utility operating budget. So in this table, from left to right, we have the budget and projections for 24-25, and then the three-year budget from 25-26 to 27-28. From top to bottom, we start with operating revenue, then operating expenditures, net operations below that. Then we have the non-operating revenue and expenditures, and the overall net at the bottom. So starting with operating revenue, metered sales budgeted revenue in 25-26 is based on 24-25 projections in terms of consumption, which has been higher than the original 24-25 budget. And in addition to this increased consumption, a moderate increase has been projected for each of the next 3 years in terms of new accounts. So with the increase in accounts and consumption, it results in a budget-to-budget increase of $87,800 for 25-26. For bulk water revenue for 24-25, we're also projecting higher than budget by over $60,000, and that's mostly due to a dry summer in 2024. Based on prior year trends, in combination with this high projection, the budget has been increased by $30,000 to $150,000 for 25-26 and each of the 2 years after that in the budget. For operating expenditures, I'll read through the budget-to-budget differences from 24-25 to 25-26, but we will go more into detail on each of these in the next few slides. So for source of supply, we've seen a budget-to-budget decrease of $20,941. Power and pumping is an increase of $12,180. The water treatment increase is $124,718. Transmission and distribution, it's an increase of $122,620. Admin and general, it's an increase of $20,198. Then for non-operating revenue, it consists only of interest revenue, which we've decreased by $5,000. Non-operating expenditures, we have debt servicing that the total budget increase is $107,000. And capital expenditures out of operations, these are for water meters. This number is actually static in 25-26, no change budget to budget, but we did increase it by an extra $37,500 in each of the next 2 years after that. The budget for 24-25 had originally estimated a deficit of $653,304, and now staff are projecting a deficit instead of $418,356. And this number is subject to change once we have the fourth quarter numbers finalized for 24-25. And those deficit lines that I'm referring to, they're the third one from the bottom, net revenue or expenditures. So these net expenditures budgeted for the following 3 years, we have $883,340 in 25-26. We have $582,156 in 26-27, and $623,121 in 27-28. So these deficits will lead to a rate review, and we anticipate to commence this in the summer of 2025. So differences from 24-25 to 25-26 are as follows. First, I'll mention again, it's a budgeted deficit of $868,340. Starting with source of supply, it's a decrease of $20,941. This is primarily from Nova Scotia environment requirements. So Nova Scotia environment hydrology modeling at the Enfield Water Treatment Plant was mostly finalized in 24-25. The total was $40,600 And we just carried over $6,000 to complete the remainder of the work in 25-26. Grand Lake water withdrawal assessment was not completed in 24-25, so it's been carried forward for $150,000. There's no variance budget to budget, it's just a carry forward. $10,000 has been added for potential land purchase surveying related to source water protection. And $6,000 has been added for abandoned well closures in Shubenacadie. And this is a 3-year plan with 2 well closures planned each year. For power and pumping, it's an increase of $12,180. Part of this is the water tower foundation repairs. They've been added to the budget for $9,000. Power has also been increased by $11,000. And these 2 increases, they are offset by panel and detector upgrades that were completed in 24-25, and that led to a budget decrease for those of $7,000. For water treatment, it's a net increase of $124,718. So chemicals make up $65,000 of this budget-to-budget variance. And the main reason for this, it's a result of our 24-25 projections actually being $50,000 over budget. And then we added an extra 5% increase on top of that for the 25-26 budget. That is based on expected supplier price increases early in 2025. Insurance has been increased by $3,500. And salaries and benefits, they have been increased by $24,400. In addition to those, small equipment, it's an increase of $15,800, with the majority of this increase being for monitoring cameras. And new Nova Scotia environment approvals are required for both the Enfield water treatment plant and the engineered spring. $10,000 has been added to the budget for this. Under transmission and distribution, it's a increase of $122,620. Of this, salaries and benefits make up $20,500. And grants have been increased by $97,600. This is due to council motion C-24-345, and that was the expansion of the cross-connection control program in order to include retrofit rebates of up to $400 per the combination of 1 device and 1 initial device test. Moving on to administration in general, it's an increase of $20,198. It should be noted in this category, under professional fees, the rate review has been carried forward, and that was $20,000. Otherwise, salaries and benefits make up $13,700 of this $20,000 increase, and the rest of it would be other operational costs, such as admin fees, regulatory fees, postage, and internet. Depreciation expense is up $65,000. This increase is mostly due to the Enfield water treatment plant capacity upgrade capital project that has been recently completed. And finally, we have debt servicing. It's an increase of $107,000, and this is due to the spring 2024 borrowing for land acquisition. That total was $3.3 million. And that concludes the water utility budget presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions council may have.
Thank you. First to speak is Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question to you, the staff. Under the water treatment, the chemicals, is that going to be an item that's affected by the tariffs coming back into Canada from the U.S.?
Through the chair, we did discuss this, and it is difficult to say currently because it seems that these tariffs are changing every day. From what we could tell when we were looking at the budget, it didn't look like it was going to be a tariff item. If anything, it would be a counter tariff affected thing. But when we were making assumptions during the budget, it seemed unlikely that Canada, when they're choosing, say, their basket of goods to place counter tariffs on, that they would choose chemicals critical to water treatment, that type of thing. we don't know for sure, but what we have had confirmation of is that supplier price increases are coming early into our fiscal year. So that's what we've based our 65,000 budget increase on.
So those numbers could change during, okay,
It could.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to staff. So by looking at this, starting the budget cycle for 24-25, a surplus of 1.5 million and change. And by 2027, 3 years later, surplus will be depleted, and we're gonna be close to $1 million in the hole at this point, okay? That is a bit alarming for that. That should be raising definitely some red flags. So the rate review is being done this year. When was the last year the rate review was done for water?
Through the chair, I believe, and CAO can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was 2016, somewhere around there. So to speak to that, yes, there are deficits each year. If you're looking at that third line from the bottom, the net revenue or expenditures, every single year we're having those big deficits depleting our cumulative surplus. And of course, that's because we've had static rates, and the rate review was done, I think it was budgeted rates up until 2019. So we've been static with most of our revenue stream while the expenses continue to balloon through a pandemic and through inflation and all of that.
Yeah, so I'm just questioning, I think we might need to look at a policy change, that rate reviews need to be done on a, at least a 4-year term to align with councils to ensure that, not only is our water utility going to be healthy, but we're not getting in a position here where we're now depleting our surplus and our reserves in our water utility, and within 2 years, going to be $1 million in the hole, and then 28, 29, even further, because we've been, a rate review's been gone for so long. And by being in the hole this much, it means the rates are gonna have to increase even more drastic to get us out of the hole. So if there had been a marginal rate review probably before this, we might not have been this far in the hole. And then any rate review after that would be a marginal increase. This could lead to a substantial increase in this rate review because it hasn't gone on for so long. So it's something that I think we have to look at as a council, whether we want to implement a policy change to make this rate review done every so many years to ensure that the people in the area are protected over a large increase at one time, and this way here, the water utility is viable and healthy. I mean, we've been very fortunate in our municipality that we have gotten a lot of major projects done and a lot of major grants from the federal government over the years to supplement things that would normally be cost 100% to the water utility. So we've been very fortunate, and even with all that fortune, we're still looking at a large deficit here in a few years. So that's something that is concerning to me as a council. My residents don't use the water service, so it's definitely something I think that the area that has the water service, we might want to look at a policy change to ensure that this is more stable, and this way here, financial wise and even I&O wise, they'll be able to plan things out a little bit better in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's a good idea, actually. I recently just reached out to the individual, excuse me, who has been doing a lot of the water utility reviews for municipalities in Nova Scotia. So we hope to line them up very soon in the summer. We haven't got a confirmation yet, but we're hoping that the work can be done as soon as possible this year, in which, if possible, we can line that up with UARB to actually review it and get the work done. It's possible the increases might come as early as next April to avoid what you're talking about in relation to the significant reduction in the accumulated surplus in the upcoming year or two. So we're working on that, and I think that policy review that you suggested is a good idea. I'll have to check with UARB regulations and see what they say in relation to how often you can or should be doing it, but I in principle agree if that's a good idea.
Because the biggest thing for me is I don't like to see large rate increases at once for our residents, no matter what service they're getting. I think a marginal rate increase over time is better than having no rate increase for almost a decade, and then all of a sudden you get hit with a big rate increase. It makes it very difficult for families to budget and stuff like that if they kind of think that, you know, we look at things at what the cost of living is increases every year, and inflation, you can kind of see where, you know, your expenses creep up a little bit at a time, but going so long without any increase that by judging what the deficit of this is and how things go, I really don't want to see our residents get dinged with a large increase at once, because it can be very hard to handle, because water is essential. You need water. You can't get away from it. Yep. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Madam Chair. Great report. A couple of questions. First one, question comment would be, just to reiterate Councillor Perry's observation of kind of the bottom line, really, literally at the end of the financial statements here, looking at the year-end deficit trend, which I mean, that to me, I look at that and say there's an opportunity to kind of, you know, put that in the right direction again. You know, one question, I mean, you know, I guess a couple questions would be, it would be interesting, here we're seeing, you know, a very short-term trend, but it would be interesting to go back over a longer period of time and just kind of see a chart almost of what, you know, what that trend line looks like for year-end surplus deficit, and maybe, you know, so to get a historical of that and corresponding as well with the history of rate increases over the same period. You know, just if you were to guess, because it might be one of those guess kind of things, how long would we go back to when we last saw year-end deficits with this?
I can't say for sure, Councillor, how long it's been. My suspicion is, you know, been here less than 2 years. But I doubt very much if you go back and look at the financial reports for the water utility, that they're actually running into deficits, you know, actual deficits.
Okay.
Because we'd want to avoid that at all costs.
Yes.
I'm not 100% sure on that, but I can certainly bring forward some
It'd be interesting to
information
see.
that you mentioned as we go forward in this water utility rate review this year in relation to what you suggested. And there's going to be, I think, a lot of information coming forward as we progress through this fiscal year
Yes.
in relation to the water utility. And this is just a start.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And one other question, observation, you know, just in looking at this and kind of going over the line items, and you did in your presentation talk about source of supply, but I saw, you know, quite a bit of variance, I guess, in that line item historically. And am I right from your presentation? I don't recall seeing that in the prep material, but the 25-26 budgeted figure of 191 is also including a report charge that was carried over from a previous period. Is that something that you? I was just wondering why. I guess the question is why are we seeing a little bit of variance in that figure?
So through the chair, yes, so that's actually, it's the Grand Lake water withdrawal assessment.
Okay.
So you'd see it in the 24, I'll go back a slide here. You see it in the 24-25 budget number.
Yes.
You see the 212,000 and then the 191 in 25-26. But
Okay.
if you look at the projection column for 24-25, the 55,000, that's because we've taken that 150 out of there and we've basically moved it to the next year.
Got it. Thank you. And if you were just to kind of dumb down for me the explanation of what, you know, what, generally speaking, source of supply costs are, I know you covered it in your slide, but just tell me again, like generally speaking, it covers what kind of things?
I might have to rely on our director Vino for that one.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Source of supply is essentially your natural watershed management. So you will have committee fees. This is typically a small bucket, but that has some sampling fees. So our source water sampling program that runs seasonally. We do 4 sample points throughout the Grand Lake watershed as an example. There are at times peaks in that where we spend funds to discontinue wells, but it's not annual. So you'll see some variability in this because it's initiative driven. There's a consistent operational one, like the monitoring costs, meeting costs, some low report costs. But then there's the spikes and the big studies that deviate your plus minus year over year on the bigger ticket items. So I will go into it. The third still study that was one of the cost pushes this past year was just completed and submitted. It was a requirement for our next approval to operate of the engineered spring. It was submitted, and it was critical in us proving through science our ability to withdraw more from the river so that we can increase our production at the Enfield Water Plant to support development. So it was all tied in and very strategic and intentional. The time on the carryover of the report on the sourcing aspect potential of Grand Lake, that's what the 150 carryovers for. Staff are working on scope, and that's what's taking time, is we want to get the scope right. We've talked with vendors, we've talked with academia, and we've been trying to make sure we're going to market with the right item. We were hoping to do a joint partnership with an academic unit. That didn't pan out. We spent a lot of time trying to go that route, but it didn't pan out because it leans more to the commercial market for professional services versus an academic study. They wanted to stay out of that realm. So that's the full explanation of source of supply, if that works.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no one wants to speak. Sorry, Councilman. Seeing no one wants to speak, thank you for your report.
So we have this motion for councilors' consideration when committee is prepared to make the recommendation.
Councillor Tingley.
I'll move to recommend to council to approve the East Hants water utility financial estimates 2025, 2026 to 2027, 2028 as presented.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We'll go to the vote. And the motion is passed unanimously. And the next item on our agenda is Equitable East Hants Plan with CAO.
Well, that's my screen. Sorry, Madam Chair. There we go. Thank you, Madam Chair. Today we are presenting to you our Equitable East Hants Plan. If you'll recall, back in September 2024, those of you who were on the previous council were provided an overview of the Dismantling Racism and Hate Act. This is provincial legislation that requires all municipalities to create a plan for their own municipalities and their own communities to address systemic hate, inequity, and racism. So with that tall order in play, staff were directed to draft for council's consideration, what we have penned as the Equitable East Hants Plan, in line with our Accessible East Hants Plan that's also currently a plan of council that's being updated as we speak. So we did have some legislation. We were waiting on legislation to tell us the hows and the whats of this plan. We received that in July of 2024, and it had a very short turnaround that we had to be compliant with legislation with a plan by April 1st, 2025. So this would put these plans in line with the accessibility plans for municipalities, and they would start the 3-year review cycle along with that. So in line with that requirement, the province also funded 2 positions at the Association of Municipal Administrators to support municipalities in helping develop these plans. So the first step that we took in developing this plan was to meet with those staff. They took us through a facilitated session to look at where we were currently in our equity journey. And we looked at what we have accomplished to date. You'll see in the report, in the plan, that there are a lot of examples of where you have made some great inroads on diversity and equity, and then the plan, of course, goes into what's next. We've also looked and tried to align this with council's strategic plan, so you had some elements in your strategic plan that spoke to equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we've pulled from that plan into the new Equitable East Hants Plan. We've engaged with our staff we have an internal committee for equity, diversity, and inclusion. We've also engaged with our human resource staff and then our management team as well to get different perspectives on the plan as it's written, operational realities, and some of the best practices that are in place in different industries across Nova Scotia. As far as community engagement, there is a requirement for community engagement in the plans, but recognizing that the province didn't give us enough time to do proper, thoughtful community engagement, what we've done is developed into the plan community engagement moving forward as we go through and put this work into play. We do have a survey right now that is out for the facilities, for recreation facilities, so we've asked some equity questions in that survey, but that won't be ready in time to meet the April 1st deadline, so that information will be rolled into our next level of planning. So in the plan as it's written, it's important to sort of celebrate the things that we've already done and recognize the things that we've done. There are 3 or 4 pages in the plan of things that council has taken on over the last number of years to help improve the equity, diversity, and accessibility in your community. These include some fairly big things, like all of the work that you've done on the audiovisual in this chamber, for example, all of the work you've done, or the investment, I guess, you've put into making your meetings more accessible to people online, doing online voting in your elections for the last number of elections. You've done some policy work around park naming policies and street naming policies to allow for inclusive names in those. Things like when council built the East Hants Aquatic Center, there was a genuine approach to making sure that the entire facility had advanced accessibility and inclusion elements to it. For example, the equipment in there for people who are in wheelchairs. And then we also have things like the universal change rooms, which were a conscious decision that council made at the time to make sure that the building itself was inclusionary. And then we've done some small things. So we've done, well, I guess not small, but most of our staff who have a role in communications for their departments have taken simple language training, for example. So that has helped with our communication being understandable to a broader folks in our community. We also have quiet hour for folks at the East Hants Aquatic Center with sensory issues. So those small policy pieces and things that we've done in our programming are certainly improving our accessibility and inclusion for folks. And we also have done some work internally. So we've got, I've made some slight changes to our human resource policies, for example, that were traditionally quite heavy on sort of Christian holidays and whatnot. So we do have some changes that were made internally for those types of things. So lots of things that have been done, and there's still lots more that can be done. The plan itself highlights 3 priority areas. One is equity and anti-racism in our service delivery, so making sure that your public services and programs are respectful and inclusive to all. Looking at our policy work that we do, of course, you're a policy-based level of government here at East Hants, so making sure that the language in our policies reflect inclusion. And that might sound easy, but it's certainly a new skill set that we will want to bring to our policy writing, both in creating new policies and then as we update existing policies. And then I think at the stage that we're at in East Hants, it really is around training and education, so increasing that staff and council awareness of the cultural diversity of our community, and then actually putting that into action to bring different communities to the forefront in our actions. I'm just going to jump over into the plan so you can see some of the 3 goals that we have. One is around the respectful public services. So our objectives under here would be to look at our cultural connections in our community, updating the East Hants Accessibility Plan, which is underway. I believe there's a report coming to council soon. Looking at our communications and how we reach underrepresented or vulnerable groups in our community. And how do we find those groups? How do we know who it is that we need to be talking to and helping out? Our asset management program, looking at our assets and how they meet the needs of the community, where they are, how they're made, what functions and functionality they have built into them. And then looking at our recreation facilities master plan and what facilities might be needed in your communities to make sure that everybody has what they need from an inclusion and diversity and equity perspective. Under our policy review, so things like making sure that when we have a policy template where we do our reports for you folks, you've noticed over the last couple of years we've added little sections for check-ins. So we think it's important to have an EDI section on your templates when we're asking you to make decisions, to know what kind of things have been thought through. Just another important part of your decision-making. Same with policies, getting that training around policy writing, looking at our human resource hiring practices. We have a fairly robust hiring practice now, just double checking in on that to make sure that we're not excluding folks with unconscious bias or the alternative. When we look at the 2026 official community plan review, for those of you who haven't been around for a plan review, that is a massive project. It's a year and a half of planning work that needs to be done. So we'll be looking at our planners to look at some of those policies with an EDI perspective. And then looking at things like, we believe based on conversation at this council that this council probably would like us to explore a living wage policy to make that something we don't just talk about, but we put into place. And then looking at our facility policies, our procurement policy, the new procurement policy that'll come into play. We're bringing it to you in probably the spring or summer of 2025. So looking at that and making sure that our procurement policies incorporate that equity and anti-racism lens where possible. And then the last goal would be increasing our, sort of our collective awareness around this. Again, finding the underrepresented groups in our communities through engagement and community programming, and then formalizing the EDI training. When you look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission call to action number 57, there really is an onus on municipal governments to make sure that we are all trained on cultural competency, conflict resolution, human rights, and anti-racism. So that is a direct call to municipalities through that commission, which I believe is something this council will want to and has been working on putting into practice. There's lots here around policy and inclusion and training, looking at training for all of our different committee members, understanding how RCMP can help in this journey of ours. And then lastly, as a municipality with a former residential school site, we'd like to explore working with Spaghetti to commemorate that site. We've talked to their staff at a staff-to-staff level about how we can use our municipal property across the river from that site to make something happen there from a commemorative point of view. So certainly something we can action over the next few years. So for this particular plan, there are no financial considerations for today. I will give council sort of the heads up that we don't have someone on staff who does this work. A lot of municipalities have EDI coordinators or accessibility and EDI coordinators. Right now we have Rachel's been working through the accessibility work. It is a lot of work for her to do. And this plan, although there's a lot in this plan, we can do some of it as a matter of fact as we go through our day-to-day work. But we don't have someone to do sort of extensive community engagement and all of that type of stuff. So I'm not sure what that means for your next few cycles. We'll start to see how we work through this. But if council wants to do this work properly and do meaningful engagement and meaningful programming for anti-racism and anti-hate, then you'll likely want to have a body on staff to do that work, to do it properly. But that's not a recommendation from today. It's just an observation from what I know of getting this work done. We've kept it sort of very high level, so that it doesn't paint council into a corner to have to do a lot of that work right away. But we don't currently have someone on staff who is an expert in any of this work, so we're learning as we go. So the Equitable East Hants document was posted for your information, and in order to be compliant with your legislation, it needs to be approved by April 1st, 2025. If you want to have changes to this, I'm sure we could work on those and bring them back to you in April. The province has reviewed this document. The folks at the Office of or Department of Justice, they have a new agency and the name's escaping me as we speak, but they have reviewed it and thought the plan was very well done, and they are happy with it as far as a legislative requirement. But council has to be happy with it as far as a plan that you can get behind and we can incorporate into our new strategic plan and then our work moving forward in 2025 and beyond. So, Madam Chair, there is a motion to adopt this as your EDI plan. However, as I said, this is a council plan, and if you want some more work done on it, we'd be glad to go back and do more work on it if there's areas where you think we've missed the mark as far as council priorities go. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. Councillor Tingley.
Through the chair, I think there is a lot of work that could be done on this, but I think we're heading in the right direction. So I'm going to move this motion that Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommends to council that the adoption of the Equitable East Hants Plan as attached to the Executive Committee agenda dated March 18th, 2025.
Made by Counselor Tingley, seconded by the Deputy Warden. Counselor Merriam is first to speak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to commend staff on putting a very high-quality report together, I think in a fairly short period of time. I know there is a provincial mandate, but I just wanted to say that I think we should all be very proud of this initiative. And it's exactly the kind of community that I want to live in. And I think, I would echo what most of our what our residents would say as well. And I think there's a lot of great stuff here. And I just wanted to, again, commend staff for that. And, I also will say that I think when you look at what's happening in the world right now, I think that words really do matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Next to speak is Counselor Musa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great report. And for the staff, is there a position like that we can acquire, like a co-op student to do that, or you need someone that is professional about it or something like that?
Through you, Madam Chair, I guess I don't know the answer to that question. If there are things that are one-off, like sort of projects that can be done, then I think we can and we do use summer students and co-op students for that kind of work. It really does depend on where council wants to go and what kind of push you want to put, and not how well you want to do the work, but how engaged you want to be in the work. Because I think if we do something, we're going to do it well. It's just how much we can get done will depend. So most municipalities, even smaller ones, have sort of an EDI person that is on staff that isn't doing this off the side of their desk, because it is important work. We don't have that position as we speak. So each one of us will look at our own individual programs and services that we offer and sort of take this lens and add it to it. But like we've seen with the climate coordinator that we have now, that work doesn't really move forward unless you have someone pushing it forward. So I think it's probably a similar situation here. We will do what we can in our programs based on this plan, and it's written that way. It's written that we can manage it. But I guess we will look to council over the next year or two to see where you want to go with this work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak is Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just two comments. I like that you have the quiet hour at the pool. I can see that being helpful to a lot of people. And as I know from the tour, it seems like the pool was set up, as you say, is be accessible. But just last week, there was someone complaining about the accessibility of the pool. So it's hard to satisfy everybody, I guess. I couldn't understand their comment, actually, what their complaint was, but not saying there should be any action taken. It's just out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak is Counselor Perry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, I'd like to just make a comment. Great report, and I do believe that what the CAO said is true, and I believe it's what has to happen is once all the internal look in each department is done, and we see what we've done internally, down the road we'll have to look and see what is required in a year or two. I mean, this plan's in its infancy, and I think we need to flush it out internally before we try and give it to somebody to take on, because I don't think we even have enough information to give them as of yet. But I do think the time will come, and I think there's going to be more that will be attached to that coming in the future with accessibility and everything else. So I think we're looking probably a year or two down the road that we're gonna we have the community services and vulnerable persons and and the EMO position. And I believe that this position will work very closely with that moving forward, possibly into the future. But it's good that we're looking at this, and as we grow as a community, and as our community keeps changing with our growth, you look at a lot of other municipalities, the same size or smaller, they have multicultural events where the municipality hosts almost like a fair or a market, and everybody's allowed to come and promote their country with either food, dance, song, or something, just to show and promote the diversity within the community, within the municipality. And I do think as we move forward, and you know, I can't think of anything better possibly to be done in the future after we do the upgrades to the parking lot of the Sportsplex, similar to what they do for Open East Hants Days or something like that. The different events that go on. Maybe there can be another one where we can engage a lot of these groups within the community once we identify them and we look internally to our departments of how we can support it. That would be a great starting point. And maybe the first year there's only 1 or 2 groups, but it's like anything else. You plant the seed and it'll grow. And I really don't see how it can ever hurt the municipality. I think it's only going to be a benefit that we recognize who our neighbors are, where they're from, and maybe some of the things that they bring to the community that we don't even realize. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Seeing no one left to speak, we'll go to the vote. The motion is passed unanimously. The next item on our agenda is Earthkeepers lease extension with Amy Pine.
Wonderful, thank you. So through the chair, the Enfield Earthkeepers are tenants over at the old CN train station building we have here in Elmsdale. Their current lease expires at the end of July of 2025. It contains a single 2-year renewal term option that requires mutual agreement of both parties. The Earthkeepers have requested to proceed with said renewal, and so this report in front of you is seeking council's mutual agreement to execute the renewal that would go until end of July of 2027. So the report contains some additional background on both the building, the land, and the lease. I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I will remind you that this is a nominal $1 lease. There is a termination clause that permits termination by either party with 3 months' notice. The Earthkeepers do sublease the ground floor and a portion of the second floor to the Elmwood Child Care Center. My apologies. And the Earthkeepers are responsible for building maintenance and operations, with the exception of structural building components, which is the responsibility of the municipality. So the intent would be for this renewal to be at the same terms and conditions of the current lease, and any further lease terms would be discussed at a future date of council through a future report, roughly this time in 2027. The report does outline at a very high level some alternatives should council choose not to agree with the renewal. And it includes assuming full operations of the building, that could be with or without tenants. Or it could revisit the surplus declaration conversation around this building as well. But staff are recommending that we would bring back a separate report to discuss those alternatives, as there's kind of lots of nuances that would need to be considered there. If council does not choose to enter into the renewal that's being recommended today, then the council motion that I'm going to bring up on the screen should be for the Earthkeepers to provide their 3-month, or to provide the Earthkeepers the 3-month notice to terminate the lease. So the recommended motion on the screen is to recommend that council authorize the CAO to execute the lease renewal term with the Enfield Earthkeepers for the former CN train station for a renewal term of 2 years ending July 31st, 2027. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Councillor Mitchell.
Yes, I'd like to move the recommended motion. I move that Corporate and Residential Services Committee recommend that council authorize CAO to execute the lease renewal term with the Enfield Earthkeepers for the former CN train station for a renewal term of 2 years ending July 31st, 2027.
Okay, moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by the warden. Any discussion? Counselor Perry.
Full support of the motion, Madam Chair. I'm just looking at the income statements and you know, things in their annual report, and we do give them this building for $1, and they make $40-some-odd thousand of revenue off it through their rentals, right? So we are providing them with basically the ability to generate revenue. So I just wonder if some sort of acknowledgement of that should be in their annual report, because I didn't quite see that in the annual report, unless I missed it. Did I miss that, Amy?
Through the chair, I don't believe you did.
Yeah. So I think that's something the public should know, is that we are empowering them to make the revenue they make for $1 a year when you're turning $1 into 42,000. I just think it should be reflected in the annual report as part of the contributions the municipality is enabling for this organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Okay, seeing no one left to speak, we'll go to the vote. The motion is passed unanimously. Okay, we're actually a little bit ahead of schedule, so we are going to roll right into Infrastructure and Operations Committee with Counselor Perry.
Oh, we have the addition, the pension cost.
In which one?
Corporate.
Okay. Okay. Nope, no problem. Okay, actually, we do have an addition to the agenda, so we are going to go ahead and do that right now.
Oh, I'm bringing it up myself? Okay. Okay. Oh, is it in what's new? Oh, okay, thanks. Do, do, do. Okay. This one here? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. So this addition to the agenda is in relation to our defined benefit pension plan. So because the municipality supports a defined benefit pension plan, we're required under the regulations, the provincial regulations, to file reports annually with them. So normally, the most important report that we file with them is a triannual full actuarial evaluation that we provide, and the actuaries do extensive work every 3 years to come up with a more precise valuation of our primary liabilities related to the pension plan. And depending upon the results of that and how we are funded at those 3-year intervals, we may or may not have to provide annual interim annual filings with the pension regulator due to that. So when we last did our full 3-year actuarial evaluation, it met the criteria that we would have to provide the annual updates to the pension regulator as well, which is a more shortened form of an actuarial evaluation. It's not the full extent that they normally go into. The last one was December 31st, 2022, so we had to provide one last year for December 31st, 2023, and we have to do another one for December 31st, 2024. And the filing is actually due to them by March 31st, 2025. And that's why we've put this on the agenda for today. Essentially, the actuary does a calculation, and they provide the report that was attached as well that provides the pension regulator with the information that they need in relation to their estimate of our assets and liabilities in the pension plan, our costs, estimated costs going forward as well. So again, we, in a historical practice, have always come to council prior to filing that final report that's due March 31st and produce this report, and had council review it and provides approval for filing with the pension regulator before we actually do so. The report itself is actually attached. I don't plan on going into it myself unless there was specific questions about it. Fairly standard report the actuaries produce. And the recommended motion that we have here is the Corporate Service and Residential Committee recommends to council that a council approve the filing of the December 31st, 2024 actual cost certificate attached to the March 18th, 2025 Executive Committee. That is the draft recommendation before you today, Madam Chair.
Thank you. First to speak is Councillor Perry.
I would like to move the recommended motion.
Moved by Councillor Perry, seconded by Councillor Tingley. On before the motion, Councillor Mitchell.
Just a question, when I was reading through the report, I was intrigued by it, and a question through the staff, Madam Chair. Could a employee get more than 70% towards pension? I'm looking at 35 times 2.
Good question. I don't know off the top of my head. It is standard, though, that 35 is normally the maximum that you can get, and I can find out for sure and get back to you, but I don't know for sure. I'm wondering if the CAO knows that from her experience in the pension plan. But, what's that? Yeah, but I will follow up and let you know. I'll let the council know for sure.
So I was just thinking if somebody cured 80% of pension if they worked 40 years or so. I was doing the numbers in the calculator the
Yeah.
other day, and I was just intrigued to ask.
Yep.
Thank
I will
you.
get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no one left to speak, we'll go to the vote. The motion is passed unanimously. Seeing no other business, the Corporate and Residential Services Committee is adjourned. Do we want to go to break now? Okay, so we are still ahead of time. We're going to move into Infrastructure and Operations Committee with Councillor Perry.
Good day. I will call to order the Infrastructure and Operations Committee. Looking for the approval of the minutes of January 21st, 2025. Moved and second. All those in favor? I know we don't have to do that. First up to speak, Director of Infrastructure with the FRIIP application report. Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. FRIP is the acronym, commonly known as the Flood Risk Infrastructure Investment Program. The application process for FRIP opened on March 3rd. The application deadline is April 28th of this calendar year, and requires a resolution of council to endorse projects as part of the application process. FRIP invests in studies or infrastructure work related to reducing flood risks in a community to reduce vulnerability. The program can fund up to 50% of an eligible project, and staff are recommending an application go forward for a flood risk mitigation study of Barney's Brook. This project is approved to take place in this coming fiscal year and is part of a previous report where staff outlined a sequence of reports that are planned throughout the municipality. And staff are recommending that council support the funding application with the posted recommended motion.
Yes, I would move that as a recommendation to council, that council prioritize flood risk mitigation study Barney's Brook
Seeing no discussion, we'll go to the vote. And the motion's passed unanimously. Thank you, Director. Seeing nothing left on the Infrastructure and Operations Committee, look for a motion to adjourn. All right. Looking that we've moved past our break time, would we like to take our break now?
It wasn't until 10:15.
Take it now before we move into Parks, Rec, and Recreation Culture. Come back at 10:20 for our 15-minute break. Everybody agree to that? Agree. We are adjourned. We will return at 10:20 for Parks, Recreation, and Culture with
want me to repeat that? First order of business, first order of business approval of minutes, January 21st, 2025, and February 18th, 2025. What is your wish? Moved, seconded, all those in favor? Contrary mind, motion's carried. Next order of business would be district recreation funds, first intake, Joe Swinermer and Alana Tapper, you'll be taking this, which one? Okay. There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We come today with our first intake for this year's DRF. The application deadline was January 30th, and these have all been reviewed by Staff Grant Review Committee. We received 7 applications from 7 different districts, and the total funds requested are just over $150,000. Most of you will remember, Council may wish to approve funding from multiple districts, especially where projects benefit facilities and users of these facilities that serve a larger area of the municipality. And we note that under each project. So if it's all right with the chair, I'm going to do a full summary of the entire report, and then we'll go back up to the top and kind of go project by project for discussion.
Good.
If that works.
Sounds good.
Thank you. So the financial impact, and we have a full chart below, district recreation funds, there's money that goes into the budget every year, plus there's any carryover remaining. Right now, across the 11 districts, we have just shy of $800,000. There's an additional $3,800 in the Gore area rate, and there's $186 in the Mount Uniacke area rate. We'll scroll through the policy. Everyone's familiar with that. When we get to the funds, here is the chart. So it shows we have some remaining commitments from last year's projects. Those have been taken out. We have the carryover. These were all realigned to our new boundaries with the help of Tippy and Jeff from Finance and Mapping. And we have the new allocation giving us our available funds. So as I mentioned, Staff Grant Review Committee meets to go over all of these applications and how they meet policy. As the grant administrator, I do go back through to each group and make sure that all remaining documents are there. I've noted in the reports if someone is missing some paperwork that we're still chasing, or if the funding is pending, the project is pending other external funding sources. In many cases, the projects wouldn't go ahead unless they received, say, provincial funding. So then we make the recommendation that our funding is contingent on that, rather than releasing funds if the project remains in limbo. So our first project is from Enfield District School. The Parent Teacher Association has applied. They are looking at a fully accessible playground, a new structure, barrier-free artificial turf surfacing. They're going to, with the help of CCRCE, relocate the swings so that they are more accessible as well. And then the total project is $279,000. They're requesting $60 from DRF, but the recommendation would be half of what's available in District 1 as per policy, which would be $31,973, leaving just over $28,000 that would not be covered by policy. As I said, they are reliant on funding from the provincial program and have applied for the large capital grant. The policy update for district recreation funds says that CCRC properties can receive a max of 33%. Their request is 21%. And I've noted that District 10 students also use this community school. The next project is East Hants Gymnastics and Trampoline in Elmsdale. We're going to review the whole thing and go back up through. Thank you, sir. This particular project This group took over a private business and is running their gymnastics club, aligning with the models of the provincial sport. So this is great. They're trying to get some new equipment in there that will maximize space. Some of it was end of life cycle anyway. So rings and uneven bars will be new. They're also adding a closed TV system that will allow parents to watch, but it also includes security on site as well as coach and athlete safety. So that's a really, it's a good use of that project. What they are asking is half of their project costs, which is just shy of $12,000. Their application is complete and they are looking for a small amount of funding from the province. And we're gonna go through almost every district is touched by this group. We have a lot of gymnasts in East Hants. When we go down to District 3, 9 Mile River Trails has applied. They're doing a boardwalk upgrade. And they have designed a new trail, River Glades, and it has some low-lying areas, so they're doing a substantial amount of boardwalk through there, and the total project cost is $29,000, and this would be the part 2 of what they did last year. They're requesting half of their project costs, and that would be what policy would also recommend. They too are looking for provincial funding. And in the past, districts 1, 2, and 10 have contributed. In District 6, Milford Recreation Association is adding a storage addition to the back of their facility. It would be accessed from the main hall. It's going to be a storage room for tables and chairs. One of the problems they have in their facility is they have no place to put the things when they don't need all of it. So this is a great use for anyone using that space if they don't need all the equipment. They're also going to have to purchase dollies that will store and move the chairs. And then another component of that project is a upgrade to their stove with some new parts. And this project's $32,000 and the requested funds are half, which meets policy. They too are looking for provincial funding. They're up to date with their building permits and everything on our end. And in the past, I noted that Districts 2 and 7 have contributed to Milford Rec's projects. Going down to District 7, Lance Recreation Association, or Society, sorry. They are doing several projects. There's 5 different components. They're outlined here. So the pool needs a liner, and that's a custom liner because of the size and shape and the way the pool was built. They need a new lawnmower. They are doing some repairs at the ball fields, some renovations and updates to their bathroom, and then also safety rail for their second ball field. In addition, some upgrades to their benches, which are in need of repair. The total cost of their project is just under $35,000, and they have requested $24,685. We have just a couple things outstanding, and I'm working with the group to make sure we get those. Any funding would not be released until we closed off that. I do note here that the pool is in District 7, but with the new boundaries, the ball fields and that part of the society's assets are actually in District 6. And we also have users from across the corridor region using these 2 assets. Moving on to District 8, Mount Uniacke Mustangs Fastball is back with the second phase. Last year they did the main field's dugouts. This year they're doing the second field. The project's a little cheaper this year because the field is doesn't need a retaining wall on the back of the benches, so that's great. They are looking for just over $15,000, about 60% of their project. They have an application into the province for their small recreation capital grant, and as councillors from the area will know, Districts 8 and 9 work together on these projects most years. And last but not least, in District 10, we have Corridor Minor Baseball. They've applied for funding to support the zero-turn mower. They're upgrading to make it easier to maintain the the field. And this will increase efficiency, especially for their summer students, but the staff as well, or the volunteers as well. Their total project cost is just shy of $10,000, and they're looking for 3/4 of that. In the past, we've seen districts 1, 2, and 7 all contribute to the ball fields projects, and club membership, as you would know, for corridor minor ball comes from across the corridor. So that takes us through the projects. We have this chart, which summarizes which district, how much they've asked for, what the funds are in that district, and what the DRF allocation would be based on policy. This chart was updated after it was sent on Friday. The amount for Mount Uniacke Mustangs was entered incorrectly. So the total allocation, if we follow policy for these projects, would be $110,000. We are talking about how applications through the DRF process and the motions forthcoming would apply for regarding the code of conduct. If councillors feel there's a conflict of interest with one application or more than one, they could declare the conflict before discussion takes place related to that motion. For that reason, we can separate district recreation fund applications into separate motions, whereas traditionally we've done one motion for the entire allocation. So if there's any questions about that, councillors can discuss. Strategic alignment's the same with all my stuff here. We come and we talk strong communities and the importance of providing sustainable infrastructure. We've thrown in this chart again if people were wondering where the money sits before we get to the end. We are recommending, at minimum 110,000 through this allocation. And we put down here as an alternative that council can approve funding for multiple districts where it benefits facilities and users across the municipality. So that's my report, Mr. Chair. And if you'd like, I will start back at project 1.
Okay, so just for clarification, if there's no one declares a conflict of interest here this morning, then we could cover these under one, or is it recommended that we do one motion for each one of these? Who wants to take that?
I think the CAO.
CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if anybody, there's the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act states that if anybody has a indirect pecuniary interest in any of these groups, which means that you sit as a member of the board or you're a member of the group, then you would be in conflict of interest and can't participate in the discussion around that particular grant. You would have to declare a conflict. So I think as we go through district recreation funds and other grant reports that have multiple options of who to give grants to, the chair of the meeting should probably ask, is there anyone who wants to declare a conflict of interest with any of these groups? If there is, then you would deal with them individually as separate motions. If there's not, there's nothing to stop you from having this discussion as a whole and making one motion. But I think as a matter of practice, before we get into these DRFs, we should be asking that question so we know what format it needs to take place, and we can sort of keep the counselors out of trouble by letting conversation get into one area or the other. Where this is an open meeting to the public, if you declare a conflict, you would sign the book when that motion, when that project comes up for discussion, you would sign the book to declare your conflict. Where this is a public open meeting, you could go sit in the gallery, and then once that motion has been made for that group, you could come back to the council table and have that discussion on the other grants. So that would be our recommendation at this point, Mr. Chairman, and we'll look for council's direction.
Thank you, CAO, for the recommendation and the guidance on that one. So I will then ask, with the applications before us this morning, are there any conflicts of interest that should be declared? Seeing none, I don't determine there is a conflict of interest, so we'll carry on. Back to you.
All right, so we're looking at District 1, Enfield District Parent Teacher Association. So the policy would allocate 31,973 through District 1 funds. That would be the recommended motion unless anyone
And
wants.
before we start with that, I hope you have your pen handy because.
I have.
For record keeping purposes.
I have several assistants working today.
Well, thank you very much. So first up would be Counselor Norval Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. District 2 would like to contribute 10,000 towards that project, and District 1 for the accessible playground.
Anything further, Counselor Mitchell?
That's all, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Mitchell. Next up, Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question for staff. This is only my 5th year, but this is a really large amount for a DFR application. Like, it's a really big project. Do you typically see bigger projects coming before you?
Through the chair, we have noticed certainly with the cost of projects increasing, the applications, the requests are getting larger each year. The volume is high. We have 7 applications so far this year, and there are a couple smaller ones, but these numbers are large. And same last year, we had some larger requests. So we definitely are seeing that increase.
Thank you. Well, we can only do what we can do. I definitely like to spread these. This is the one opportunity where we have a chance to, feel like we're doing something for the recreation in our area and the community groups who do so much through volunteer and fundraising, and they work so hard. So it's really a pleasure for me to be able to allocate funds to these groups. This project in particular is 50% of my available funds would be $31,973, which is may not be a huge amount in the scheme of their total big $280,000 project, but it's definitely a really, really big amount from my DFR funds. So in saying that, I will commit $31,973 to the Enfield District School accessible playground project.
Anything further, Counselor?
Not at this time, thank you.
Staff is that. Next up would be Counselor Cecil Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. As well, for the District 1, our district I cover is also involved in this, and we're going to donate $10,000 of our fund towards the purpose.
Anything further, Counselor?
No, sir, thank you.
Duly noted, staff.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else, I think we could move on to the next one. Take it away.
All right, so now it's District 2, Elmsdale, and we're looking at East Hants
So do
Gymnastics.
you want to review this right
Nope,
now? Or
only
you
if
got it
there's
all
a
good?
question. Yeah,
All right, I'll
thank
trust
you.
All right. All right, carry on. Counselor Mitchell.
We're in District 2, Elmsdale, East End Gymnastics and Trampoline Club. I know they've working hard to make that club viable and moving forward as a nonprofit. So I'll allocate $11,849 from my district rec funds to that project.
Anything further, Counselor? Duly noted, staff.
Thank you.
Next up, Counselor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know that residents in District 1 use this facility as well, so I would like to contribute $2,000.
Anything further, Counselor?
No, that's
Duly
everything, thank
noted,
you.
staff.
I would like to clarify through the chair, 2,000 above or in?
2,000 above the $11,849.
Noted, thank you.
Noted. Thank you, Counselor. Next up, Counselor Hibb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will also take 2,000 out of my district and put forth to this project.
And again, above the amount or contributing some of it towards Councillor Norval Mitchell's allocation?
Above the amount.
above the amount.
Anything further, Counselor?
No, that's it.
Noted, staff. Thank you. Counselors, Cecil, no, Counselor, excuse me, Counselor Tingley.
Through the chair, I just have a question to staff first. Do we know how many members are in this organization?
Through the chair, yes, I didn't bring the sheet with me, but it's, I think, close to 500. They have a wait list, actually, in their program.
Okay, I'm going to contribute $2,000 as well, over and above.
Thank you.
Anything further?
That's it.
Noted. Thank you. Next up, Counselor Cecil Dixon.
Thank you. Through the chair, I as well, from District 10, going to donate $1,500 towards this over and above.
Thank you.
Thank you.
At all?
That's it, sir.
Noted. All right, seeing no one else, I think we can move on to the next one. That would be District 3, 9 Mile River Belknap. 9 Mile River Trails. Councillor Eldon Hibb.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll put forth the declaration of funds as recommended, 14,605.
Anything further, Councillor?
No, not at this time.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor Hibb. Next up, Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This 9 Mile River Trails is widely used by my residents as well, so I will put forth $2,000 above and beyond the $14,605.
Anything further, Councillor?
No, thank you.
Noted. Thank you. Councillor Norval Mitchell.
Mr. Chair, this is a worthwhile project. I know people need to stay healthy and exercise, so District 2 will contribute $2,000 towards this project, above and beyond what's already allocated.
Anything further?
That's it.
Noted. Thank you. Next up, Councillor Cecil Dixon.
Thank you, Chair. District 10 will donate $1,500 towards the trail over and above, please. Thank you.
That's it. Noted. Next up, Councillor Walter Tingley.
Through the chair, District 7 will contribute $2,000 over and above.
Anything further?
That's it.
Noted. Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Eldon Hibb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you to staff, how much is left in the remaining to be paid for that project?
We have a spreadsheet working right now.
Yeah.
Do you want to, Mike, there?
So their entire project cost is 29,000. So they're about 7,500.
Left to
Yeah.
I'll take the rest, the 7,500 of my district rent to make sure that project gets completed.
They, just to clarify, they do have an application in to the Nova Scotia Trails expansion program. So if they got that funding, that would be about 8,000. So we could take that. My recommendation would be pending if the provincial money didn't come through, that the balance would come, or that 7,500 would come from District 3, but that I wouldn't allocate it altogether with an application open to the Trails program right now.
So, through you, Mr. Chair, what you're saying is that it's pending. If the money didn't come through, then it would actually come out then.
Yes. So last year, just as precedent, we did that with the Mount Uniacke Mustangs. The councillors approved an amount over in case the funding didn't come through from the province. And then we had the ability as staff to process that once we saw their final budget and their grant approvals. So that's certainly the way we can prepare the motions for next week, that additional amount could be covered through District 3 if that's your wish.
That is my wish, yes. Thank you.
Good, Councillor Hibb. Noted. Okay. Thank you. Next up would be Warden Rolston.
Yeah, thank you. Could I just get a little bit of clarification on where the Gore 1 cent remainder falls now, in what district?
Certainly. So we actually, and it was not done as part of the original reallocation. And then as I was preparing the report recently, I overlaid the boundaries from the two changes. And the remaining Gore funds are back to District 11, the Kennecook Bar Settlement side. That was the remaining corner that had been in District 5. So it is back over to your district at this time.
All right, so we've already expended the upper Nine Mile River and Gore part, because I was thinking that, I would certainly, and I do believe that there are folks in my area who I've come to realize do use the Nine Mile River trails. Apparently it's not needed now, but I would be prepared to have offered, say, $1,000 from my district towards that if it's needed.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no one left to speak, we've all got that all noted. Can
We do.
Move on?
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to District 6 North Lance, Milford Recreation Association. Councillor Craig Merriam.
Great, thank you, Chair. And yes, I am supportive of the DRF policy allocation of $16,230 for the Milford Recreation Association project.
Is that all, Councillor?
Thank you.
Thank you. Noted. Next up, Councillor Hibb.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will contribute $2,000 to this project above presented.
Thank
Noted.
you.
Councillor Tingley.
District 7 will contribute $2,000 to this as well, Chair.
Noted.
And for clarity, Councillor Tingley, above
yeah.
the requested amount. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Garden Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Oh,
You're good? Yeah. Okay, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. District 2 will contribute $2,000 towards this project above what's already been allocated or committed.
Noted.
Thank you. Noted.
Seeing no one left to speak, I think that might wrap that one up, and we'll be on to, which one? District 7, South Lance. South Lance, I'm having a hard time getting
It's
used to that.
District
But anyway,
7.
Lance Recreation Society. So I'll go for that. Councillor Walter Tingley.
First, through the chair, a question for staff. So this amount that they're applying for includes amounts to do work at the ball field as well?
Correct. So through the chair, the ball field projects run about 5,000 of the cost, and we're about 30,000 on their project for the pool side of things.
District 7 will contribute $17,480 towards this.
Thank you, Councillor. Noted. Councillor Mitchell.
This question through you to staff first. It says the application says incomplete and documentation outstanding. What does that mean?
So there are, I work with the groups for about 6 weeks following all the applications. They don't have their meeting minutes that say they're approving or things like that. In this particular case, they're missing some additional quotes for the washroom. They have asked several organizations, so pretty soon, if they aren't able to do that, they'll provide a list of organizations they've asked or businesses they've asked for the quotes, and that will clean that up. But we don't release funding until all the check marks have been made on the file.
So you're comfortable that you'll get that information?
Yes.
District 2 will contribute $2,000 towards that project above what is already committed?
Towards the shortfall. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, Councillor Merriam.
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I would like to put forward $2,000 above from District 6, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor noted. And Councillor Garden Cole.
thank you, Mr. Chair. I just need to do some adding here. Okay, so I know for a fact that District 1 residents use the ball fields, and they do need some work, but especially that pool, which is which is so important. So District 1 is going to contribute $5,000 to this project.
Noted. And seeing no one else left to speak, I do believe that wraps that one up. And we'll move on to District 8, Mount Uniacke South Rawdon, Mount Uniacke Mustangs Fastball Association. First up, Councillor Michael Perry.
Yes, I'll fund the DRF policy allocation of $13,108.
Is that it, Councillor?
That's it for now.
Councillor Musa.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know they have applied for provincial funding, so I'll allocate 13,108 above, like we're splitting me and Councilor Prairie, and whatever comes out of the provincial fund grant will be taken off equally from both districts. Is that good?
So to clarify, Districts 8 and 9, like last year, would fund 100% of this project
Minus-
after the provincial grant has been awarded and split evenly between the two districts.
Yes.
No provincial grant, we're still funding the project 100%.
Correct. Thank you.
Is that it, Councillor? Thank you. Seeing no one left to speak on that, we're at Enfield Center, quarter minor baseball. Councillor Cecil Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will do the DFR policy allocation of $4,992 for one half of the project.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Next up, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. District 2, because that's a worthwhile project, and I know some of the children that play there will contribute $2,000 towards that project over and above.
Noted. Councillor Garden Cole.
And I'm going to contribute the shortfall, which was 2508, and then his will be 2,000 above the
Above.
2508, yeah.
Councillor Perry.
Is there anything left in that remaining to fund?
The total project is 9984, so we had probably about $500. Yeah.
There are some kids and some families in Mount Uniacke that are active in the quarter minor baseball, so I'll fund $500 towards this project.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. And that brings this one to an end.
So the recommended motion, Mr. Chair, would be that committee recommend to council to approve based on discussions, and then we would come back with a very detailed chart of this based on the discussion and all the sheets that are with my helpers today.
First up, Councillor Walter Tingley.
Just questions through the chair to staff again. For District 7, is there any shortfall now?
I'd have to look at a chart. Hold on. Yes, the shortfall, they went over. According to the calculations, you've exceeded the shortfall for the Lance Rec application. Is that what you're?
That's what my question.
Yes, thank you.
That all, Councillor?
That's it.
Councillor Mitchell.
Based on the discussion, I'll move the recommended motion, move the Parks, Rec, and Culture Committee, recommend that council approve District Rec Funds 2025, 2026 Intake 1, based on discussion at committee. Motions will have details for council at a later date.
Second that.
Moved by Councillor Mitchell, seconded by Councillor Dixon. On before the motion, Councillor Garden Cole.
I'm just looking at something. It's just Councillor Tingley just asked any shortfall. So does that mean the shortfall in their, not the shortfall in the total project amounts, but the shortfall in the 50% amount? Is that
Through
right?
the chair, it would be the shortfall between what they asked for and what we have allocated based on these discussions. So in my report, I list a shortfall as if there's an amount above the policy recommendation, but in the conversations, that was covered.
Okay, I was just wondering. Thank you.
That all? Thank you. Okay, it's been duly moved and seconded. There's no other people wishing to speak. What is your wish? I guess we'll go to the vote. Votes are in, it's passed unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next up is volunteer nominations. Oh, I gotta get this microphones. Now, how do I get my speakers on here? There we go. Ms. Tapper, you be taking that one? Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair, this next report outlines the nominees for the 2025 East Hants Volunteer Awards, and it does also include the Firefighter Long Service Awards. And then in a confidential memo sent to council, we do provide a recommendation for this year's Model Volunteer Award. I think council is fairly aware of what this report brings forward. It does list the nominees below. We have the costs. They're included in the operating budget. This year, we did increase that budget slightly to accommodate some rising food costs. So it is $6,500. The background gets into the approved location and date, so May 2nd at the Knoll Fire Hall. And it goes through how we actually promote for nominations. So we put out social media posts. There's an online application form. And then there's also applications available at the office if people choose to do a paper copy. So from the nominations this year, we did have 18 eligible individuals. What we've done is actually list them within the report. They're alphabetically listed. And then also we put with that the nominating organization. The next section of the report goes into the Canadian Volunteer Fire Service Association Municipal Long Service Awards. So the Municipal Long Service Award medal is for 30 years of service, and then there's additional long service bars for 35, 40, 45, and 50 years of service. So staff do reach out to the volunteer fire departments. We get those nominees from the fire departments, and as per council's request, we've included that list in the report this year. So we have 7 recipients as listed on the screen. There's a small section on the model volunteer where one individual is identified by a committee of internal staff from PRC as well as some of the comms team. So we review all of the nominations, there's some discussion, and then we bring forward an individual whose commitment and dedication to the community has stood out. And again, that individual is kept confidential until the night of the awards, where they will receive that at the end of the evening. We discussed briefly the ceremony itself, doors opening at 6. There is a reception, and then the awards begin at 6:30. We also invite our MLAs and MPs, as well as a local representative from the CVFSA, and then we outline the number of guests individuals can include as well. So, the awards do speak to the strong community by showing appreciation for our volunteers and for all the work that they do within our community. I'll scroll back up. So we have the recommended motion there that the Parks, Recreation, and Culture Committee recommends to Council to approve the volunteer award nominees and the model volunteer be accepted as presented in the confidential memo sent to Council by email, and for the model volunteer be designated to represent the municipality of East Hants at the Provincial Volunteer Awards.
All right, you've heard the report. First up, Warden Ralston. I'll hold it like it somehow. There you go. Oh, I got to see, excuse me. Oh, there you go.
Thank you. Just before I make the motion, I just did want to ask a question. I don't think we've increased the budget much for this recently, and I just would like to ask the question, this is a significant event in our volunteer community, well-recognized, you know, and I think well-appreciated event. And I just wonder, is our budget adequate to continue to do a good job like we have been doing the last number of years?
Yeah, through the chair, I think that's a really great question, but we did really look carefully at the budget for last year, and the increase that we did put forward as part of the budget discussions, we feel very comfortable that does cover the ceremony costs, and to do it in a really meaningful way. We've already started the planning for this. We've established the catering for the event. It's actually going to be, I think, by either the auxiliary or the fire department itself. And through discussions with them, we feel that our costs are well covered with the amount that we have for this year. Yep, absolutely.
Just with the cost of everything going up,
Yep.
and I just wanted to make sure, it's usually a well, not always, but at least 50% of the time, it's a volunteer group that ends up doing the catering and everything to this, and I just want to make sure we're being fair in what we pay them. So having heard that, I would move that Parks, Recreation, and Culture Committee recommends to council to approve the volunteer award nominees and the volunteer be accepted as presented in the confidential memo sent to council by email, and for the model volunteer be designated to represent the municipality of East Hants at the Provincial Volunteer Awards.
Okay, moved by moved by the warden, seconded by, I think, I noticed Councillor Merriam seconded. Any discussion or question? Councillor Michael Perry, you were on before the motion. I'll give you a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just through you to staff. I know it's too late for anybody to be nominated to be in consideration for the model volunteer. Is there still time, if there's a couple of late people coming through, to be recognized as a volunteer right now? Because I do know there's probably a few people straggling out there that some organizations might have forgot about nominations or put it off because they're only getting started up now as spring comes, heading into summer.
Through the chair, we have accepted nominations past the deadline in the past. Typically, they came fairly shortly after the deadline, which I believe was 17th of February or the 20th. We could look at entertaining that, but it certainly wouldn't have them be eligible for the model volunteer because of
Absolutely.
trophy printing. I would just caution that we don't accept too many because we are in the process of establishing catering numbers and things like that. So I mean, council may want to consider that, but again, it would just be how many and just how long we would actually accept those.
Yeah, no, because I'm just looking at, like, a lot of the spring and summertime organizations are just really getting on their feet now. And with the nomination period happening in pretty much the dead of winter, a lot of these organizations don't meet or hold their AGMs during that period of time or even get together. So it might be something we might have to look at in the future. Maybe, you know, it's a reminder in the fall and we open up nominations a little bit earlier, because I know, you know, there's a lot of outdoor groups, whether it's soccer associations, baseball associations, and different things like that, that they're only now getting on their feet and going through, getting them organized for the year, let alone nominating volunteers. Thank you.
Well, that would require a policy change, wouldn't it, through the director?
Well, and I do want to actually note that we do actually push this out quite in quite a few ways, and we do try to get representation from across the municipality. So oftentimes it goes out in our community development newsletter. We put it out via social media. If we're not hearing necessarily from some groups that we know are active, we've prompted and things like that. So I do think staff do make a really good effort in trying to reach as many organizations as possible. Again, it just comes into difficulty with planning for the event or number of attendees, et cetera.
I know it's difficult, because what I'm noticing now through a lot of social media and a lot of places throughout the municipality is a lot of these organizations are asking for volunteers. We need volunteers for summer. We need this, we need this, we need this. So there's a lot of need for new volunteers as well. And so I'm just worried that some of these organizations are more focused on filling the holes they need for their programs to move forward than actually thanking some of the people that have been there for a long time, because your first inclination is filling the holes so the programs can run. Thank you.
All right, some duly moved and seconded, and the motion's been put forth. And seeing no one left to speak, we'll go to the vote. Votes are in, it's passed unanimously. Next order of business, Rising Tide Shore Signage Project Update. Ms. Tabor, you be taking that as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this next report is really giving council an update on a project that's been part of our capital budget for a few years, the Rising Tide Shore Signage Program. And really, this initiative is aimed at, enhancing the visitor experience, improving wayfinding. There's an aspect of it that supports economic development as well, and it really focuses on that Highway 215 shoreline route. So we've had $100,000 approved in the current capital plan for a few years. Over the course of the last year and a half, prior to our tourism and events supervisor going on parental leave, they worked with the comms team to start drafting a plan on what that signage may look like. We did receive $10,000 from a provincial beautification and streetscaping program. That it was $20,000, $10,000 went for signage at Burntcoat Head Park, and then $10,000 was actually allocated for the first phase of this project. But we felt that it was important, because we've had this sort of out there for so long, that we do a check-in with council before we go next steps. We have, as part of this, there was some discussion about collaborating with West Hants, because that does extend into their municipality. I do understand that as part of their budget last year, because we did start these conversations with them about 18 months ago, their council had allocated $50,000 for similar signage in their municipality. But as of yet, we haven't really finalized that they're on board with our sort of approach with this. I do know they have a fairly large project ongoing. They have 6 very large, the Highway 102, 101 sort of community signs. They have 6 of those going in this year. Really, this is about sort of updating council, and then, perhaps getting council to give a recommendation that we continue moving as outlined in the report. So there is the background here. It speaks to the scenic part of Highway 215, how it stretches across the 2 municipalities, and there is that aspect of it that really is tied to the tides. Again, we speak of the consultation with West Hants. We did speak with Colchester. They actually have a fairly strong signage program for their geoparks. So they were kind enough to sort of share what that looked like, because they did an in-depth review a number of years ago. So that really helped our internal staff to frame some different proposals that we brought today. And then we also looked at an independent assessment that was done a number of years ago. It was a study by Roger Brooks, and it really looked at tourism, wayfinding, et cetera, in Colchester as well as East Hants. So we did reference that a bit as well. Jumping into discussion, it really talks about what this approach to the signage is, and we sort of have it as a phased approach, whereas the first phase, we look at those larger Highway 101, Highway 102 signages, or signs, sorry, the community signs. There is sort of a graphic there that shows on the left what the current sign looks like. These are owned by East Hants. They are on Public Works property, and they are maintained and installed by Public Works. So Nova Scotia Public Works would actually produce these signs internally and then put them up. And really, sort of the first phase that we're suggesting as part of introducing this to travelers, et cetera, would be the addition of a panel on the bottom. And that's what shows on the right-hand side. We have had preliminary discussions with the province. They have an individual who their focus really is on this kind of signage. We had received some feedback from them about adding another panel, because they actually come in 12-inch strips. That's how the individual signs are made up. They actually recommended not adding an additional panel, because the size that we had, or an additional 12-inch strip, the sign size that we had was sort of max for wind load. But if we wanted to move forward with this, what you see on the right-hand side is actually removal of the bottom 12 inches and addition of that Rising Tide Shore name, starting to direct towards Burntcoat Head Park, as well as some graphics that are in the manual that we're hoping to sort of brand this route as. Cost for that is listed in the report, so it's approximately $20,000 to $30,000 to update the 2 signs. And then again, we have some grant funding available if council wanted us to proceed with looking into the permissions from the province to do that. That would be the focus for this current fiscal. It's something that sits with the tourism and events role in conjunction with the other things that they do in the busy tourism season. We felt that this could be something, should we have council align with it and get the provincial permissions, we could move forward with that. The next phase, which would likely come in 25 into 2026, would be sort of directory signage at junctions. So we've listed sort of some key junctions that we've identified in East Hants. So the Highway 215, Highway 236 in South Maitland, and perhaps the junction of Highways 354 and 215 in Knoll. If West Hants is in alignment and wants to move forward, they could look at what those junctions would be in their area. Obviously, our costs would be for East Hants. They would cover any costs in West Hants. These are about $15,000 to $20,000 per sign. Again, here's another graphic. So this is one of the junctions that I just mentioned. And on the right, that's sort of a superimposed, version of what that may look like. And it could include not just signage for our internal locations, but we would develop some sort of framework or even policy perhaps that would actually go into what sort of other businesses would be attached to that signage. But really the idea behind this, and it's very common in not just tourism locations, but across Nova Scotia, even in urban areas, we end up with a lot of sign clutter. So it's trying to identify a brand in a location, consolidate signage into that one sort of, collection of signs on the posts, and it sort of identifies that region as the Rising Tide Shore. And then the third phase that staff have suggested, and again, this would come later into 2026, would be the individual attraction signage. So in the graphic I have there, it's actually just sort of like what would that look like for Burnt Coat Head Park. And then we also have our brochures that we actually provide to many different places across Nova Scotia, visitor information centers and the airport. And we would update our brochures to align with this. So there's all of those pieces. So I have sort of listed there sort of a rough outline of what next steps would be, and really it's that council discussion, then it is confirming with the province that, we're going to go with this. It's also understanding where West Hants sits. They were also trying to take a similar report to their council this month. So we were trying to align it together, and then it just outlines the different pieces we're doing there. What we've done with the current sign manual for this project is add it to another overarching sign manual that our comms team has developed for a lot of other signs throughout the municipality. And then we're getting a consultant to review those for font, size, how big does the font have to be to see it from a certain distance, all of that kind of stuff. And that information then would help us take it to sign manufacturers, et cetera, to understand what that installation would look like for the second phase and beyond. So it's sort of a high-level check-in with council, certainly open to questions, discussions, et cetera. But we've been wanting to bring this for a couple of months, and I just think it's sort of important to get council's thoughts before we proceed any further, so.
Thank you for the report. First up to speak, Councillor Warden Olson.
Thank you. Certainly supportive of the project still, but a couple of questions as I look at the proposed directory signage in Phase 2, and just looking at the sample that's been kind of plugged into the picture here, and I kind of go down a rabbit hole. How big can this sign be? How many things? Because we don't mention our own Walton Lighthouse. There's no directory signage to get there. We don't mention and I see there's a separate sign there for the Historical Society Museum and a separate sign for the Lawrence House, which kind of does make it look a little cluttered along there, all those different signs. So I just wonder, is this the type of project that could be bigger than what this sample that's put here shows? Or
No, that's an excellent question. So to your point, this is sort of a proposal, but then that next phase I spoke of with our comms team is getting that consultant to look at it and understand, can we have it a bit larger? How does that align with the province? Because there's actually, I believe there's separate departments within the province that reviews those signs, depending on if it's a, Highway 102, 101 signage, if it's a secondary highway. But that would be the next phase of the project. Could we make it a bit larger? What does the font have to look like? Also, what are the guidelines for the province to, understand how big this could be and what would make sense there? And then certainly we would take that into consideration. This is just to give a visual and give an example of what council may see for these signs. Yeah.
Because I would really want to be highlighting our own municipal
Yep.
assets, I think.
And
if
that
we're
would be the
paying
intent
for
to
the sign.
primarily put our municipal assets on there, understanding there may be opportunities
Yeah.
to put other ones on there. But no, absolutely, our municipal assets would be primary.
And secondly, just a question, I know initially we were going to talk to Colchester too, I'm assuming there was no buy-in from Colchester.
Colchester was wonderful in the sense that we had some really great conversation, but they feel very strongly about their current sign manual and how they've branded that. But they were, like I said, they were kind enough to share the manual they had, which really helped us understand size, font, shape, et cetera. But no, they'd like to stick with their particular brand for that.
Okay, then having heard that, I would move that Parks, Recreation, and Culture Committee recommends that council gives the CAO direction to continue on the Rising Tide Shore signage program as outlined in this report.
Moved by the warden, seconded by Councillor Hibb. On before the motions be Councillor Dixon, Deputy Warden McPhee, Councillor Perry, Councillor Garden Cole, well, she get missed, and Councillor Musa. So, Councillor Cecil Dixon.
Thank you, through the chair. I was gonna make the motion originally, but that's been done. It's nice to see that you've gone back to Roger Brooks' presentation, because he presented that to council here, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. And a lot of these things that you're doing now are things that were in his book and program, so it's appreciated the staff is not forgetting what we had in the past. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Deputy Warden McPhee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, when you reference Trans-Canada, you mean Highway 101, 102? Not
Yeah.
Highway 104?
Yes, no, through the chair, definitely Highway 102 and 101. Yep, that's the reference. My
Any
apologies.
thoughts of, like, at exit 15 of putting signage up there like this? Because I did think of that after I saw
Yeah,
that.
so at this time, we've just sort of kept it sort of fairly focused on what we have. And it's not to say that perhaps the program couldn't grow over time, but we're cognitive of the amounts we have allocated. Obviously, we would look at external grant funding and every opportunity that we could. But for now, I think we've taken a fairly conservative approach as we move forward in this.
Yeah, I just thought that exit would be a great place to capture some people that are traveling the other trans, on the Trans-Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Warden. No, only one. Councillor Michael Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I see in the timeline it talks about a fall meeting. Obviously, you guys are having discussions. If West Hants Council is moving agenda items this month, we should definitely ensure that we have these discussions with them, so no funds or anything get committed or things go a different way if we're going to try and
So
unite.
through the chair, we've met with West Hants a number of times, and we have fairly open line of communication on this. So certainly we're not just waiting for that. I know based on council discussion here, I'll touch base with the individual that's actually spearheading that conversation with them. But no, we've been in constant communication about this, absolutely.
Yeah, just sometimes, some people have memories of goldfishes, and we want to make sure that they always kind of understand what's going on. So I just want to make sure that was on tap, just to keep everything reined in, because I think this is a great program, and I think, we start with the shore, but then we have the whole backbone going down the other side, and there's plenty of things that this could expand to with different routes throughout the municipality, which can spur on a lot of economic development in the rural area, hopefully in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry.
Oops, sorry.
All right. Seeing no one left to speak, and we have a motion on the floor, we'll go to the vote. Votes are in, passed unanimously. Next item of business would be familiarization bus tour dates. Ms. Tapper, you'll be taking that one as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Shirley has the calendar up. So we've had a discussion at council a few times now about a familiarization tour for council. We did speak to this in the fall. We had landed on a motion where council was looking to book 2 separate dates. We were doing sort of a corridor-centered tour into the Waste Management Center, and then another date for a more rural shore, Mount Uniacke-based tour. And we had landed on the last motion for an April tour as well as one in June. I think we had listed June 27th, but then we wanted to understand grad dates. So looking at the calendar, there's a number of days that council is committed on Fridays, evenings, et cetera, in both April into May. So staff wanted to sort of come back to council and say, would you be open to an initial date for the first tour, that corridor into Waste Management Center, early in June? We're thinking June 6th, 13th. The 20th could also be an option, but I guess it's important to note that that is the day before National Indigenous Peoples Day. So perhaps there would be events that council may want to attend on that Saturday. But we were hoping to sort of get council to weigh in on a date in June so we can actually move forward with the planning for that. We had allocated funds for this in the operating budget. And council did make the decision to go with a 24-person mini coach so that everyone could go on the same coach together and get sort of the same commentary, et cetera. So I guess I wanted to bring up the calendar and have that discussion with council so we can land on a date. Graduations for Hants East, Hants North, and Avonview are the 27th, or in one case, 26th. So there's those dates that may not work for council. I expect that there would be a number that would want to actually attend those ceremonies. So that's sort of where we are with this right now.
All right, is there any suggestions from the committee on which dates? Warden Ralston.
I'd just like a little bit of a refresher on how many of us signed up for it, because I'm trying to remember if I did or not, based on the dates we were talking about.
Through the chair, I can actually speak. I did a rough calculation. So we have 11 council members. If, CAO and senior management team are attending, then that is 17 people. And then there's likely key individuals from our staff body that we would want to have, perhaps Amy or Graham, et cetera. So really, that 24-person coach would accommodate all of those individuals. But I think if we find that fewer members can attend or fewer individuals, then we would accommodate with some sort of transportation or an alternative.
So you're just are you looking for a date for the first corridor one and the other one, or just the corridor?
Just the corridor one. I think when we look at July, August, and then into an Explore Your Own Backyard, then we'll firm up a date for the rural location, knowing that we'll want to do it before the sites close. I think, later in the year would work well for those locations.
Okay, well, I would be open to either the 6th or the 13th of June. I don't know. Okay, other folks.
Okay, so if council's fine with either of those dates, we'll move forward with planning, and then we can send out an invite, confirm attendees, et cetera. But I think that would, work out well for weather and as well for, council not giving up too many Fridays.
Anybody have a preference? Councillor Perry.
I would probably prefer the 13th with the 6th, the previous Friday, the delegation away at FCM. Having being
perfect.
home for a week, being home for a Friday, then doing a trip before we get into.
But it is Friday the 13th.
I know, it's a great day to be out together.
Okay.
That would be my preference, thank you.
We've
And
heard
then,
a
of course, if
preference.
anybody else has a work conflict, that obviously would take priority.
Deputy Warden McPhee.
Yes, I'm all right with either date, but the 13th would be my preference. I may have something on the 6th, so I'm flexible, but if the 13th was good with everyone, that would be fine with me too.
Okay, we've had a date of two people who've expressed the 13th. What, does anybody, show of hands for the 13th is the best way we can get this. 13th? If I don't see your hand, I'm gonna say the 13th. Against the 13th. Well then, 13th, 7. So Warden, you want to speak? Is that all, Councillor McPhee?
Yes, yes.
Warden.
Well, I just wondered that we're getting towards the end of the school year, and I think specifically of Councillor Garden Cole, who might like to do this tour, and if it was to take place after school was out, it might make it possible for her to participate, whereas towards the end of a school year, she would still be committed to working. So I don't know if that's something that might want to be considered or not.
Well, we've had to straw polls the 13th, but I see Councillor Garden Cole's up there. What would you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I appreciate you thinking of my school schedule. But I did go on a corridor tour recently. It's the World Tour or Mount Uniacke that I would, that is the one I haven't been on yet, that I would be hoping to be able to arrange with my schedule. But this one I'm okay, so, but thank you.
All right, do you require a motion or is an agreement, will that constitute good enough?
Yep, through the chair, that would be more than acceptable, just to
So it
agree
is the
on that.
13th. 13th of June, Friday the 13th. Good luck.
4-leaf clovers.
Because it's Friday the 13th, I will not be there. I'm superstitious.
I am too.
Okay.
Anyway, that's it. So the next would be adjournment, break for lunch, but I will remind everyone the nominating committee is to meet before lunch to consider applications for Water Protection Committee. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment and to reconvene at 1:30 for Planning Advisory Committee with Councillor Norval Mitchell as chair.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Perry, seconded by Councillor McPhee. All those in favor? Contrary of mine, motion's carried. We are now on a break.